I'll always be the first to admit when I have a bias towards something, unlike a majority of you who seem to think I revile all RPGs and wish for the genre to burn when I criticize the game they like.
Am I the only one who understands the complexities of this ambitious cinematic masterpiece? This movie isn't stupid! You're stupid!
And I'll be honest, when I heard that people wanted me to play a game they called a 3D version of Terraria, my brain couldn't combine the bread and pixelated world with all of its bells and whistles with the landscape of today's adventure games on the platform, and I really thought it'd be ass, honestly. Or at the very least, just not living up to expectations in terms of what I came to expect from Roblox as a black-pilled RPG incel. But it really surprised me in a good way. Some of the most engaging gameplay I've played out of all of my reviews comes in the form of this game. Yes, I played Pilgrammed by Phexonia Studios, ran by the user Bloodbrain. Even after getting through a good chunk of it, I was still low-key tempted to keep going. Oh, okay, never mind. We can't do it that way. But why such a positive review? Well, that's sort of why you're watching the video right now, so shut up and let me cook. As usual, I looked around to find any outside information about the game that could give me greater context on its origins and development through Discord servers, other links, and the like. Joining the Discord server, a lot of things ring bad bells in my head that what's cooking here is bad news. I know I said I like casualness when it comes to developer relations, but holy fuck. These people are more schizophrenic than I am. I legit cannot make heads or tails of what they're saying in the announcements. And there's a constant allusion to an update that has yet to be delivered with unknown content because I can't find details anywhere, and I'm too lazy to watch the dev's YouTube channel for additional information. Thank God the updates page is concise at least. Also, they use verification using some forbidden bot that tries to get your data, and I didn't trust it, so I didn't get a good glimpse into the community, so I'm sorry for that. If my word means anything to you, I guess it seems pretty chill overall. The only thing I have to say is that I'm shocked and dismayed to find that Bloodbrain beat me to the punch with a video completely dismantling Deepwoken as an RPG. So after this video uploads, I will blow up my computer and never return. I think the best part of this game comes from the looseness of how it treats the world. It definitely aspires to be something in the realm of fantasy, but goes a little above and beyond by doing all the wacky shit that lets it transcend any grounded expectations a player would want of the world. You can have attacks with funny sound effects and not necessarily detract from the experience because you already know the world doesn't take itself seriously. I'm beginning to understand where players come from when they correlate the game with Terraria. It's not that the mechanics are necessarily similar, and Pilgrimmed is far from being a sandbox, but it's through the loosely cobbled together storyline along with a bunch of other super random stuff that makes the world worth exploring beyond what the game demands of you. While I think the combat itself isn't anything big to write home about at face value, the challenge that enemies pose in their unique attacks and fair but challenging level scaling make it uncharacteristically addicting, especially when you yourself get a hold of said unique attacks. The feeling of random adventure is added onto by the vast state of the world. I found every nook and cranny takes me to new areas or pleasantly loop around to different parts of an area I've already been to. It all makes it feel very connected and easy to get around despite the large mainland. Each area feels very unique visually and each place has something interesting to check out. Although some places may feel too empty or flat between finding enemies or the next area to go to, it's made up for by the scattered ores you can find and mine to make better gear. The only issue I have with this system is that the game forces you to abide to a linear playthrough to get said gear because you must have a pickaxe made with the ore from the previous area to mine ore in the current area, which can be annoying when you just want to jump around and do your own thing. I can't say for sure, but I think it just gets to be a bit lacking beyond the mainland because the islands intended to host boss fights feel too tiny and are really reminiscent of early One Piece games to me for some reason. Not in a good way. The NPCs are pretty interesting and much like the last game I tried, add a sense of unpredictability and meta humor to the game. The sound effects were pretty fun too, but honestly kind of got old fast, like I can only take the vine boom so many times before I develop chronic depression, please stop ruining me. Beyond this, I found the game fun as long as I never tried to take what it was giving me seriously. The game pushes you forward through the map by assigning a general overarching quest or two with each move through the respective section of the game. I don't know how much content is offered in this main line of the game, but daring to go beyond what the game wants you to do is never too hard and never unrewarded. This will make more sense when I talk about enemies, but I'll touch on that later. The only thing that can be a problem is if you decide to be too ambitious, like myself, and end up running through an area before you're even at the aforementioned section, and then the quest lines you get end up being the same exact task you completed only a few minutes before. My friend and I found a cool desert temple we thought was simply a little extra thing you could stumble across in the world, only to find we needed to go there anyway to kill stuff. It's all the more cucking when you have to kill stuff you've already killed before. Looking at you, Desert Viper. You see, an underrated element of open world RPGs are these purposeless places that have their own purpose, so to speak, something interesting to stumble upon without the game explicitly needing to tell you to go there. Basically, places to explore, for exploration's sake. Pilgrimmed has these little moments that do just that. For example, I climbed up to the top of the wall and I was able to find this boss fight, but for the most part what you see is what you will get in time. I mostly omitted talking about the combat because at its bare bones level, it's once again an uninspired simulation of the system that Deepwoken had popularized on the platform. I'll give it props for its versatility and how effective yet challenging the parry feature was to use. Not unplayable, but difficult to land at any given moment given the fast-paced nature of the fights, and when you did land it, you always felt immensely satisfied. Perhaps the reason I've taken a liking to this iteration of the combat is because it's unapologetic in its presentation. It does nothing to really quote-unquote innovate, but it makes it clear from the start, and even with newer melee weapons you still have the fundamental systems that are making it all happen. On top of that, the inclusion of a skills tree that uses points you get with each level up to offer you a variety of passive abilities to choose from really scratches the PvE itch, as it helps the player feel all the more powerful when some of these abilities deal well for crowd control and allow you to take on multiple enemies all at once. By the way, the enemies are some of the most interesting I've had the pleasure to fight against in a while. A lot of the beginning enemies have basic touch to damage attacks, but later on you start getting more complex enemies with unique attacks and effects that you can inflict on you. A sort of logbook for every enemy in the game, including bosses, updates with the defeat of said enemy, showing you drop chances for loot and what sort of EXP you'll get from beating one and such. On top of the different achievements you can get in game, these two systems make for powerful incentives to 100% this. As for me though, I found greater pleasure in the loot drops. While the equipment system is initially very confusing and only made worse by the fact that for some reason you can't use all of its functionalities unless you're near a cabinet item, once you understand it, it's pretty robust. There's a lot of different armor and gear that can give buffs and alter how certain effects affect the player. Try saying that 3 times. And sometimes your stuff has effects beyond making you stronger in general, like the Mondo ring turning bosses more powerful if you hit them first, making for a challenge amongst experienced players. And some armor even amplifies your fucking combat, like you equip something to give you your basic armor specs, and on top of that you get a pretty useful attack move for free. Take the Thief King's Cloak for instance. I can use it to send some enemies flying, or as an alternative dash move, which is the multifunctional Utopia pretty much any good attacks will execute in open world environments. Compare this to Lore Game's skill system, where I found skills that I had no use for because I had to go out of my way to equip, and the fact that nearly all of them were only useful in combat only. Despite all this though, I think one of the main reasons behind its unpopularity today is simply because the general UI can be extremely confusing at first. Don't get me wrong, I like the customizability of it, but its presentation leaves a little something else to be asked. I literally was not able to find the skills menu for the first like 20 minutes of my gameplay until the game randomly fucking pointed it out to me, and then I had to red eyes. And the cabinet system, in my opinion, is pretty stupid. It just adds false importance to the little town areas you might stumble across, which, might I add, are another form of progression in and of themselves, as waypoints by using a teleportation system to fast travel across the world. I find this a really effective element in large worlds if done properly, not just being used as a cheap movement tactic to prevent players from laying eyes on barren wastelands, but I think Pilgrimmed did a decent job with it. All in all, Pilgrimmed is a wacky mess of a plotline that has surprisingly addicting quirks to the gameplay, and as long as you don't go in expecting an immersive adventure full of beautiful moments and realistic world building, you'll be bound to enjoy the game as a mindless, fast-paced action that doesn't feel like a waste of time either. The progress is very prevalent throughout the game, which I admire, but it makes me wonder about the game's replayability, especially if it's in a linear style. Well, they have multiple file slots for free, as well as magic weapons you can use instead of melee weapons, so I'm not too worried about that. Maybe I've said too many good things about the game, but it's really just refreshing to see somebody do something different from what I've come to expect from the games in this genre. Fundamentally though, I don't think this game lives up to the feats of innovation it's been hyped to have, despite the enemies and the random events that can happen, like the Meteor Raider event. I'm sorry, but all of this doesn't really equate to being a 3D version of Terraria. It just doesn't happen. And in my opinion, I think you're doing the game a disservice by calling it that, because then you unfairly build up players' expectations, and then when they see what Pilgrimmed really is, which I'm saying is not bad, they tend to walk away, and that's probably why the player count is so low today. Basically just happens to do things that should be the status quo, and even though it excels in those aspects that so many other games are lacking in, it's still criminally underground nevertheless, but it's understandable given the complexity of the systems you're given to work with, and please, for the love of God, redesign the UI. It's really fucking confusing for no reason. But for me, this has been one of the more interesting RPGs I've been suggested, and honestly might be the first time I come around to playing recreationally in my spare time, mostly because Nezarec fell behind in the questline. He's trying to beat the game.
Huh? Oh, you wanna hop off?
What?
Or do you wanna finish the second quest and then hop off?
In conclusion though, I don't think you'll regret playing this game. I mean, unless you're obsessed with the idea of playing a super serious RPG, but like, you know, those get boring. Anyways, I have been spiriteddefault, and thank you for watching. Oh, look behind you! Run, run, run. Bro.
Do not kill him! Do not kill him! Do not kill him!